I played Nier Automata.
Yeah, this is Platinum Games picking up the hot Nier license and making a new game.
Well, that's not totally right. It's still like the main creative minds behind the original Nier are still behind Nier Automata.
Really?
So,
First of all, thoughts on the original Nier? Where do you think it stands in the industry?
so this is one of those things. I recognize it's a big cult hit. I played through it back in the day, did a review for it, and I didn't love it.
Is it one of those where there are elements that are really interesting?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and that is true for Nier, and that's true for Nier Automata, where it's like, it reminds me a little bit of. So I reviewed The Last Guardian for us last year, and that was a really weird review to do because that game for me was such a swing of highs and lows, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, wow, it does this thing so well and this thing so poorly, and reviewing Nier Automata made me feel like that in a lot of ways, where there are some things that it does that are just spectacular, and then other things that are just like that aggravated me. So it's not one of those like consistently one way or the other games.
Sure. So what does it get right?
So the stuff that it gets right that I really love is like the narrative elements and how all of that ties into just provide this really a really clear and interesting and sad sort of vision of the world.
I like that last word.
Oh yeah. So the basic setup. So if you haven't played the original Nier, you can still jump into this one. It's set so far in the future from the first one that like there are threads that connect them, but you can start fresh with this.
Xenogears Xenosaga style.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So really what it is the idea that like when the game starts, what you know is that you are an android as part of this whole android army that is fighting off a machine army. And now the distinction there is androids like are they look just like humans except they're androids, I guess.
Okay.
Whereas the machines have a very sort of like old school like robotic, like they look like big metal robots.
Okay, T-1000, T-800, sorry.
Yeah, actually, I mean, more sort of like, I don't know, they almost have a kind of like campy robot sort of look to them. They're sort of like very cylindrical and blocky.
Okay.
Yeah, there was one you were fighting that looked like a water tower with legs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
K2SO from Rogue One? Is that what we're talking here?
Yeah, a little
okay,
like that.
All right.
So, but the idea, what makes like the premise so interesting is that like the androids and the machines have been at war for just thousands of years.
Love
And the idea is that the androids are fighting on behalf of the humans because the humans are basically forced to evacuate Earth and they live in this like tiny compound on the moon.
Until the war's over?
Yeah, basically. So the idea is that you are just fighting this millennia long war. That it's just this constant cycle that there's just no end to it.
I like it. Yeah.
But it's all happening on Earth. So Earth has just been, it's another one of those sort of like post-apocalyptic sort of things, right? Where it's like,
I like how quickly that's become a cliche, apparently.
A lot of that going around.
Here we go.
Like
Another torment.
The idea that like the world has just been completely reclaimed by nature, more or less, except they're weird, like there's like an amusement park that's still up and running, and
The machines love
things.
that.
Yeah,
It's very
they
fun.
do actually.
What? They ride around little ponies.
Anyway, so all of that's to say is that like under that sort of setup, the uncertainty of like the androids' connection to the humans and what they're really fighting for, the fact that the machines don't just seem like brainless machines, that they have sort of developed into like a civilization and a culture of their own. Like, it's interesting the way that the story sort of provokes the player to consider like, sounds kind of hokey, but like provokes you to consider the meaning of life through things that are not alive, through androids, machines, robots, whatever. Like by using these things as the sort of conduit for the message, there's a lot of interesting thematic stuff.
So is it just like the bit from Mass Effect 3 with like, does this unit have a soul like stretched out into an entire game then?
No, that's not that I would not say that.
Okay.
Okay.
Like it gets, because it gets, I don't know, like I said before, it gets sadder at times.
So this is an interesting premise.
Yeah.
What's the game?
Well, you seemed interested in what was going on.
No, I hear you.
So the game itself, you play, so it's because it's from or developed by Platinum Games, it does have a sort of stylish action look to it. So as you're playing, it's third-person action, looks a bit like Bayonetta. You're doing a lot of like flashy sword combos, shooting at things with a little robot that's by your side, and like chopping up a bunch of machines, doing like, launchers and aerial combos.
So less
and that
RPG
kind of
overall
stuff.
then?
So where the RPG stuff comes into play is a lot more in sort of the character growth, where it's like you have basically this motherboard that you can like slot different upgrade chips into. So that's how you customize your loadout more. I mean, you choose which weapons you're using, but then you also choose sort of which facets get like bonuses. You can get this. It's like, oh, this will auto heal me, and this will restore 30% of my health when I kill an enemy and stuff like that.
Okay.
So now I did give this game a 7.75.
Okay.
Which is on the lower end of where a lot of people are coming in on it. So I don't want to come off sounding that I'm like, I don't want to come off pretending like I'm super positive on all this stuff.
Okay.
Like, it does these things that are very interesting.
Yeah.
But on the like combat and RPG front, one of the things that bugs me about it is that like, and I'm not demanding that this game is like Bayonetta where, you're constantly buying new skills and all of that stuff. But like combat to me had a kind of samey feel to it from beginning to end. So you can do some things, or you'll get some different moves that you can equip on your little like Robopod buddy and stuff like that. But for the most part, you're using largely the same sort of array of moves at the beginning against enemies as you are at the end.
Okay.
So, and a lot of the things that you're like the RPG stuff we were talking about, the upgrades that you slot in, it's not like, oh, I'm going to buy a new move that's good for taking out a group of enemies or something like that. It's usually just stuff like, that are sort of like passive percentage boosts to things you can already do, with some exceptions like I said, sort of auto health regen after a little while and things like that. But so to me, that was just sort of a not super satisfying way to play an action game. I wanted it to grow a little more. I like to feel like my capabilities are sort of getting better.
It seems like that would make a really good first impression, but then I'd imagine it's a longer game.
Yeah, well, and this ties into another thing too. Is like I got through it in about 40 hours.
Okay,
maybe a little less. But part of that is that this game has multiple endings. Technically, it has 26 endings.
Oof. Okay.
One for each letter of the alphabet.
All right,
I love
it.
that.
Let's do it, Japan.
I
Hell
hate
yeah.
that.
I love that so much.
Of course you do.
So now some of these endings are just kind of like are just kind of silly, So it's like,
Let me guess. Q, that weird
Yeah.
one.
It's stuff like so like when you open up your motherboard thing, you have some chips that are pre-installed on there that are actually basic like game functionality stuff. Like, hey, this is the mini map, and this is the like damage tech or like the damage numbers that pop up when you hit enemies and things like that.
Okay.
That if you want to conserve space and like make more space for other upgrades, you can take those out. It's like, oh, I just don't have a mini map right now.
That's so cool.
But one of them is called the OS chip. And it just says like removing this will like cease your functions or something. So if you remove it, that's how you get one of the endings. Like you just die because you remove your like central chip.
That seems fun.
Yeah.
Is it a thrill to try and find them all?
Yeah, so that's one of the interesting things about it. But what I will say is that's like the first 5, A through E, are sort of the main endings. So I got all of those during my playthrough in about, like I said, about 40 hours. I did a lot of like side quests and stuff in there too. So it's a longish game.
Okay.
Yeah. But another interesting thing about its structure, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little fired up about it.
Please.
Is that like, is for some of those endings, you essentially are doing, playthrough isn't quite the right word, but you sort of follow different characters through different paths, right? So the first character you start with, you will play through that game and you'll get an ending. I think that's the A ending. And then you start as a different character and play through basically the same stuff from a different perspective. And then you get a different ending. And then you play through as another character who goes to a lot of the same areas, but it's a different sort of angle on the story again. And then you get, so it's like, that's how you get through the completion of the story, is that like, even though it treats the campaign as sort of, it's kind of separate and whole at the same time.
So does it get super repetitive then, going through like these recycled environments? Like, is that one of your issues?
That was one of my issues with it also. Yeah.
Okay.
Because like, especially for those first 2 campaigns, it is like you are playing through the same events. In some cases, the 2 characters are like right side by side, and you're just playing through it as a different character who, admittedly, like the abilities are a bit different, but not different enough as to make it feel like, oh wow, I'm really playing, like this really changes this.
Yeah,
you know. So again, that was another sort of problem I had.
So it seems like my read is funky structure, funky systems. If you like stylish action and you like RPGs and can withstand some oddities, go for it.
Give it a shot. I mean, if for no other reason, it's just like super interesting in the I'd say like in the narrative risks that it takes, and in the gameplay risks that it takes. Because like while a lot of it is that third person action, it also deviates, and I don't want to spoil all these, but it deviates into some other like weird parts. You're playing along, and all of a sudden you're surprised that, wow, this is not what I thought I'd be doing right now. You know,
all right.
So it goes off in some cool directions. It's definitely a game worth checking out.
On PS4, coming out on PC soon.
Correct.
There's a lot of debate about when it's actually launching on Steam.
It's March 17th.
There we go.
It's March 17th
So much
now.
debate.
There was a lot of debate.
It was unclear.
The debate was actually just me and Joe for like a week arguing when is it going to come out.
So loud in that little bullpen. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can click right here if you want to subscribe and listen to the audio version of the full show. Full episodes air every Thursday, and they feature Game Informer editors sitting around talking about the biggest reviews, previews. We talk about exclusive impressions of Game Informer's cover stories. We have long-form developer interviews, everything that's great in gaming. So every Thursday, be sure to check it out.